Now that we have been through the estimated costs in the 6th edition of the PMBOK, let's quickly review here in the Crowd Training's interactive online course and look at the inputs, outputs, and tools and techniques. Well, if we are estimating the costs, we have to know what are the plans. Hence, the first and foremost one is your project management plan. And I'm going to draw it as the filing cabinet because it is not just our cost management plan, but it's all the other plans that we have in place. So you think about the scope, the resources, for instance, too, the quality of those resources or the quality of the materials that we need to buy. So many different factors coming in, especially too for procuring anything, right? We got to think about what are the bids, what are the estimates of reaching out and making those RFQs, RFPs, etc. So everything in that project management plan is an input that is going to be used. Additionally, we're going to have a series of project documents. Those project documents could vary. I'm kind of piling them up here to show, but you have to consider, well, if we are needing resources, let's say this paint can and this paintbrush, well, we have to think about what is the resource requirements, and that includes to the people and the other materials and the resources, but also too, you can look at the schedule, like when are we expecting to use them, and maybe even to calendars, because seasonality might play a part in our use or our expectations or our estimations of what we're going to have. So those various different project documents are going to definitely come into play here. And as always, the environment that you work in, I'm going to just draw a bunch of buildings because that represents the industry or your company. Obviously, if I'm in a very small company without a lot of history and we're doing brand new projects that we have really no clue on how much it's going to cost, well, our guesses are going to be much different than somebody who is doing something over and over again and has a lot of history. So there can also be then history or at least guidance for you in those your OPAs. Oh, this one, sorry, is your enterprise environmental factors. This one is your organizational process assets, which are things like maybe templates that your PMO or project management office offers to you. Maybe it's some other templates or assets that you could use to help you and your team estimate the cost of your project. Those are the inputs. Now let's move on to the tools and techniques. And there's plenty. There's 8 of them here. So we're going to have to spend some time. One, well, if you've done something before or you could think about it, you might have a bit of knowledge or experience. Maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody else on your team, but you've done it before, you've walked the walk, you've seen it, and you can point out that this is what something's going to cost because you are in the know. And so that's simply called expert judgment. You might have even costers on your team who know this stuff. They've seen it before, and then they can relate to you or give you some guidance, where sometimes you just have to base it on your experiences and the team's experiences. But also, you have the use of analogies, and so you can use various different analogies to help you estimate. So this is that, for instance, if we planted a tree one year and it cost us about that much, then if we were going to plant other trees this year, then we can guess that, yes, it's a different situation, it's a different location, maybe a different supplier, but there's enough that we can at least go off of to get us in the ballpark, and we can use the analogy to help us get an estimate. My trees kind of look like bombs, but okay. Also, you can use your parametric. Now, the parametric, well, maybe even in this case of the tree planting, if we have to do a whole bunch of trees throughout our park, we might say if this one tree is going to cost us $100 and we have 100 trees to plant, well, then that gives us a estimate to go off of. You can also look at maybe square footage or other things that could be mathematically derived. Those are easy, quick examples of how we can use parametric estimating. Also, we can do the bottom-up estimating, And the bottom up, if you think about your work breakdown structure, and if it's broken down, and I'm going to use an illustration of this sort, but if I break things down far enough, and I could take each of these individual components and keep moving them up through the activities, to the work packages, to the control accounts, eventually then, if I have this amount of detail, I can then aggregate them in such a way from the bottom to a more fulfilling or more complete answer. And then that would be our bottom-up estimating. If I was just to look and make estimates from the top down, well, then that would be a top-down estimate. But bottom-up obviously is going to be more precise because we've broken it down to more components to give us more accurate numbers, hopefully, if our estimates are good. We also have the 3-point estimate, and the 3-point estimation uses the equation where we have 3 points. You're most likely, or what we collectively think might be the best option here, and then you are going to take your optimistic choice and your pessimistic choice. And the thinking is that if you are using the beta distribution, your normal bell curve, you're going to go 4 times the most likely and get an average, and then that will get us somewhere in the middle based on normal distribution. If you don't want to use the 4, then you're getting triangular distribution, which is not going to be as accurate as I feel, but it depends, of course, on your project or what you're working on to get that estimate. Beyond the 3-point estimate, there's different ways to analyze your information and the data. So you can think about alternatives to the costs. So if we were thinking, well, if we went this route, we might save a few dollars here, but we have other risks involved. Or we might say we have 3 different suppliers that could provide it. What is the difference between these suppliers and the costs and the support, all the different ways to think about and connect and the dots and figure what is going to make sense. And so you look at the data and try to analyze it. Also, too, we might have software systems that are going to allow us to do this material and cranking of the numbers and evaluation. And so those are your project management information systems. And also, too, you might have meetings and discussions, but you're probably going to have to vote or to decide which ones you're going to do, not do, or kind of just finalize and say, all right, what is the estimate that we're going to use and move forward, maybe revise it later. And so we simplify that, just say, all right, you need to make a decision at some point. So what is the decision-making process or techniques that you are utilizing in order to get an estimate to work off of? Those are the tools and techniques. Now the outputs. Pretty simply, if the whole point of this process is to estimate your costs, for the output, you should have, cost estimates. What is it that we guess is how much something is going to be? So again, that's all the different resources, the different materials that are used. You're maybe even bundling together. All those different estimates. But also, too, what is your rationale, or what we call the basis of those estimates? And if we're saying, well, if we're needing this person and this is amount and why and how much it's going to cost and how long we're going to need them, that is a simple example of the basis of your estimates. And because of these new estimates, or what we've come across or what we've learned from doing this, we are going to update those project documents, however they might be or however they might be formed, like lessons learned, assumption logs, many other things that we have learned from this exercise and this repetitive process that is done throughout the project, and help us better refine, maybe help us refine our estimates in this project, future projects. But those are your inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques. And that's a quick look at and review of the estimate costs here in the Crowd Training's interactive online course.